Hi everyone, how are you doing today? My name is Riccardo Ferrari. I'm a consultant for Liferay in the global service. Oh, sorry. And today's presentation is about automated testing. Automated testing proved to be a problem. It's a problem for Java EE application, and of course, it's a and it's of course a problem for Liferay as well. Fortunately, we found a solution, and I'm here to share the solution with you. We're gonna check the inside of the solution. We're gonna see how it works, how you can deploy the solution. We're gonna have a couple of examples, and then I guess we are ready for lunch. So, what is the problem? Basically, unit testing is often not enough to validate a component's behavior. Why is that? Because Java EE applications are rarely applications that are performing a self-contained task, a self-contained work. Most of the time, they interact with the greater system. They provide services, they use services provided by other components. So, validating how the components interact with others is as important as validating how the component performs its task. So, business logic aside, how can you validate your plugins? The answer is quite easy. You can do integration tests. And this is where the problem comes in. I'm pretty sure all of you have a good understanding of what integration testing is. If you ask internet, there are slightly different definitions of what integration testing is. Today, when I'm referring to integration tests, I'm talking about those tests that rely on other services, portal services, portlet services. So whatever that forces our plugin to communicate outside. How did we fix that in the past? Well, if I have to think about what we have done in the past, we came up with solutions. If I have to summarize them in a word, we've been creative. We had to develop and came up with different approaches and solutions. I can remember I was asked to write some integration tests, and those integration tests were actually JSP pages. Those JSP pages were triggering the actual test, and we had a Selenium script to trigger those tests. You can imagine how messy was that, because then you have to parse the result, and this is not really developer friendly. This is not really working well. So, because obviously most of the time, you're wasting your time in setting up the test, not actually performing the test itself, and this is not really a no-go. Fortunately, we found a solution to this. The solution that we're currently experimenting and we are very enthusiastic with is Arquillian. What is Arquillian? Arquillian is a JBoss community project. It's backed up by Red Hat, and it's there since quite a few years now. So this means that it proved to work, works pretty well, and works with Liferay as well. And we are now very happy with that solution. So what is it in the end? Arquillian is actually a testing platform for the JVM. They claim that they bring the test to the runtime, so you're writing real test and you're not using mocked up service anymore. And this is good. This is good because that allows us to really test our plugin. It's based on three main principles, and those principles, each of them is bringing us some value. Test should be portable to the two different containers. So test should be independent from the container. This is obviously important for us because this allows, for example, to test our plugin against the different containers we do support. We can test now with the Liferay version 7 that is coming into the scene. We're going to change a bit the architecture. We're going to be OSGI based, but we will keep the same testing infrastructure because Arquillian does support OSGI containers as well. This means that we will not have to learn a new technology to test our plugin. We have it already. We can test our current plugin, and we can test the future with that. The second principle is that those tests should be runnable either from your IDE to your continuous integration tool. And this is exactly what we were looking for. It's cool to be able to run the test from your IDE. This because allows you to quickly test your code before committing it. But it's also really important to be able to have a mechanism that is running those tests in a continuous integration tool so that I can prove that my code is working very well. Last but not least, Arquillian doesn't want to substitute your existing testing framework. And this is a big value because you don't have to start from scratch with a new testing framework. You will use your existing knowledge with your favorite testing framework, and Arquillian extends it. Arquillian takes care of offloading us from all the hassles, all the problem coming from integration testing. So how does it work? Arquillian simply takes care of dealing with those tasks, with those diligences that are required in order to run those kind of tests. For example, it manages the containers lifecycle. It actually can manage the full lifecycle from the startup to the shutdown. And then when we're writing our test, it takes care of packaging everything into a deployable artifact. This means that it bundles everything into an archive. It's based on the shrink wrap framework, which is yet another JBoss project, I think, and puts everything into a package that is deployable on the container. Of course, when it has the deployable artifact, deploys that to the container. And once it's deployed on the container, it also takes care of injecting the required dependencies, services, or resources in order to be able to run the test. And we don't have to take care of anything. Then it runs the test. Test can be run either from inside a container, some sort of white box testing, but also can be run against the container, which is black box testing. So we are actually experimenting both of the approaches, and those are working, and we don't have to take care of anything. Arquillian does the heavy load here, the heavy lifting. Of course, once the tests are run, it collects the results and returns them back to the test runner for reporting. So in the end, what is left to us is just writing the test, focusing on the test. And this is a big advantage. So how do we get started? To get started, of course, we need a container. What is a container? Well, Arquillian supports multiple platforms and different containers. By the way, who is familiar with Arquillian already? Are you using it with Liferay? So it supports from the standard and well-known application servers, JBoss to WebSphere. It supports servlet container, Tomcat, but it also supports OSGI container and many more that we don't care because they don't work well with Liferay. And we need, of course, to have a container, configure it accordingly, and being able to use it with our Arquillian platform. Beside the container, what we need is a dependency management tool. Why is that? The reason is not that we just need a way, a mechanism to split from our runtime dependencies and our testing dependencies. The thing is that Arquillian makes extensive use of our dependency management tool in order to configure itself. We're going to have an example later on. And then, of course, what we need is just a test. We just have to take a little step there and making sure that we run our test with the appropriate annotation, but everything will be simply smooth. We're going to have an example. So the container, as I said, must be able to communicate, to interact with the test runner. For this reason, requires some kinds of setup. Arquillian also supports, let's call them different families of containers. Supports, I'm sorry for the microphone. Does it work? Because I have to stay like this. So it supports embedded container, which we will not cover because, yeah, there's a huge discussion around embedded container. Many people think they are not really good to test real-life scenarios, so we will not cover this. Managed containers are the type of container for which Arquillian takes care of everything, start up to shut down. Of course, in between, there's always the injection of the resources, running the test inside the container and stuff like that. And what we found that works pretty well for us and with us is actually the use of remote containers. Remote containers are containers that Arquillian expects to be there. It simply connects there, does his job, like running the test, and then collect the results. This works pretty well for us, and for many reasons. Not only because Liferay is probably not the fastest application to start up, but just because it gives us more flexibility in managing, for example, the data set that we want to test. So managing the container lifecycle, we're going to see that we're using different tools to manage this, such as continuous integration tool. Oh, no, wait, there's an important point. It also supports multiple container configuration. And this is very important to us because you don't have to take care of writing different tests to test it against the different container. You can collect your configuration, distribute them across the different profile that you want to test, and then everything simply runs smooth. You can test against Tomcat, against JBoss, against your local Tomcat, or against a remote whatever container. And everything is already supported by the Arquillian platform. How do we configure this Arquillian? Well, the main file here is the Arquillian XML file. This is a file that we should make available on the test resources class part. And what it contains is mainly, at least for us, containers configuration data. If you're leveraging on additional extension from Arquillian, you will end up adding some parameters here. But for us and for today, this is what we have in our Arquillian XML file. Just configuration to the different container. The snippet we have here, we actually have two containers configured. One is a JBoss and the other one is a Tomcat. And that's pretty much it. Because we're going to see that to configure it, it's even more straightforward. So how do I set up this container? In Liferay, we did quite some job for you, and you have, or you will have, two options, automatic or manual. Of course, we are Liferay. We have a quite strong relation with Tomcat, so we'll talk about Tomcat today. Nothing prevents you to test it against your favorite container, as Olaf said before. So the automatic way will be as easy as running an unset-up testable Tomcat. There's a little remark there. So most likely this will be available and fully tested from 7 onwards. However, the code, what we are doing there, is already available in our GitHub repositories. You can check our master branches, our 6.2x branches for the Liferay plugin repository, and you will find out what we are doing there. What we're doing, we're simply taking 3 little steps to prepare our Tomcat. The first one, we need the Tomcat Manager application. This application, I don't know if you're familiar with that, is that very ugly application that comes with a very ugly UI that allows you to deploy via web interface some plugins on the Tomcat servlet container. Second thing we need is, of course, to set up the user in order to run this application. This is a snippet coming from what our setup testable Tomcat does. So we're just setting up some role and a user. And last but not least, what we need is to enable the JVM that is running Tomcat to accept remote JMX connection. Why is that? Well, the reason we said that Arquillian needs to interact with the platform, and everything, when talking about the Tomcat connector, is happening through the JMX connector. So now that I have a container up and running, what kind of plugin can I test? Speaking of Liferay, I can test all the plugins you can think of. The regular plugin, the one that we were used to develop until today, portlet, hooks, you name it. But also we'll be able to test OSGI plugins. We're already doing that for the audience targeting application that is available through Marketplace. That is a good example of how we are doing how we are integrating with Arquillian. We're actually making a lot of use of integration tests there. We're going to have a quick discussion about this later. So when I'm testing my regular web application, if I'm using the plugin SDK, the only thing that I should take care of is to follow our practices. Most likely there's an untarget, which is a setup Arquillian that takes care of doing the annoying things. But what you need to have is actually having your test in the test integration folder, your test classes, having your Arquillian XML available in that folder as well, and simply making sure that your dependencies are correctly set. Now I guess it's time to talk a bit about those dependencies. How do we configure Arquillian? Arquillian, we said, is an extensible platform, and the configuration of this platform is happening through the dependencies we make available on the test class part. So the different dependencies we pick up defines how Arquillian will behave. Let's get back to the IV example. So referring to the plugin SDK, when using Ivy, for example, what we want to do is, for example, using JUnit to create our test. And the first extension, well, actually, we have to take care of 3 steps when testing with Liferay. The first one is, of course, picking up the right testing framework. And this is the first extension, which is the Arquillian JUnit container extension. And the second one is something that we added to the platform. If you go to the Arquillian website, they talk about micro-deployment. They tell you that you have to create a method annotated with a deployment annotation, and there you have to create your archive. In Liferay, we're doing everything for you. So if you pick up the right extension, in this case, the Liferay Arquillian, when using the plugin SDK, we take care of generating the Liferay plugin on our own, and this is not a problem for you anymore. So we have the test, we have the testing framework, we have the package to be deployed and tested. The last thing we need to tell Arquillian is against what we want to test, the plugin. And this is the role of the last extension. The Arquillian Tomcat Remote 7 extension tells our Arquillian platform that we want to test against a remote container, and this container will be, of course, a Tomcat. I'm talking about the plugin SDK, but what about Maven? Yes, we do support Maven as well. So you can test your plugin built with Maven. And what we have done, we actually created the Liferay Maven extension that takes care of packaging the artifact according, of course, to the Maven syntax and rules. So again, just swapping an extension, I can test my plugin using different build tools. Let's get further. What about OSGI? This is an example coming from our audience targeting application. And generally with OSGI bundles, or at least when it comes to audience targeting, what we are doing, we are creating a test bundle. This test bundle takes care of running the test against a consumed bundle. Structure-wise, doesn't really matter. You still have your test classes. You still have your Arquillian configuration there. What really matters here is hold in the dependency again. Because now that we are testing OSGI, we need to change 2 of the extensions that we make available on the test class path. The first one is the Arquillian container Liferay. This extension takes care to tell Arquillian that we are not testing against Tomcat anymore, but we are actually testing against the OSGI container that Liferay makes available to us. This extension is developed, of course, by us, and we're currently working hard on that to be refactored and committed back to the Arquillian community. So stay tuned for further update here. And the last extension you see there, which is the Arquillian Deployment Generator BND, of course, simply teaches Arquillian how to package our artifact when talking about OSGI. In Liferay, we are making extensive use of BND tools when it comes to OSGI, and this extension leverages on BND tools in order to package up everything. So how do we write a test? Well, we are writing the test exactly as before. The only thing we should take care of is just picking up the right annotation and making sure that we run with the Arquillian class. So let's see a quick demonstration of this, if I can make it. Hey, okay. I don't know where is my... Duplicate the monitor here. Can you see it? So here you have a Tomcat. This is a Tomcat console already running. What we want to do here is actually testing a couple of plugins. So we will start testing the Hello Arquillian portlet that you can see here. This is a plain portlet that comes with the service builder project in it. The entity we have is the foo local, so the foo entity, which is the sample entity, nothing really fancy. For this entity, I already created a couple of additional methods in the foo local service implementation. And now the purpose for today is actually testing this out. So I have my test integration folder here, which was set up by the setup Arquillian target. And I have my Arquillian file that tells my Arquillian platform how to connect to my local container. Now I just have to write my classes. So I will have a com, Liferay, Symposium service class. This is the foo local service test class. And to speed up the thing a bit, I'm going to copy and paste some hint. As I said in my last slide, the only thing really matters here is that I run it with the Arquillian class. Now I have to prepare the test. In order to prepare the test, I'm just pasting here some code. Let me organize some import. And what do we have here? We have a setup method, which is annotated with the JUnit before annotation. And what we're doing here, we are not mocking up portal services. We're calling them directly. I'm actually fetching some portal information. Don't take this as a best practice, of course. You should do it differently, but this is just for the sake of demonstrating it. What else? Let's start to bring in some tests. I have my test here. Let me arrange some import. And yes, so I have my test. The first test is actually testing the foo local service util. It's testing the add foo method by adding a foo entity with those fields. And the second one is actually checking for the existing of a foo entity. So we're almost ready to go. There's only one thing that we should take care here. We're working with real persistence. So we should take care of having a data set that is consistent. You can go to the Arquillian website. There are different solutions to this problem. Here, for the sake of demonstrating it, I'm just adding a method. Is again a teardown method. This teardown method simply takes care of rolling back what I added in my persistence. We're going to have a slide later where I will tell you what we are doing, actually, for example, with audience targeting. So they say that I can run this from my IDE. So let's run it. I just click play here. Something is happening. Let's focus on the server log. Actually, this is a bit better. Yes, my machine is not that fast. Probably my company should buy me a new one. So what just happened? It just happened that a plugin was deployed, the Hello Arquillian portlet. Some tests ran, actually two of two completed successfully. I have a green bar, and then the plugin was undeployed, and everything through my IDE. We have another example here, which is this demo hook that is a courtesy of a colleague of mine. This hook is simply changing a portal property, and we are making sure that this property is set. So the only difference here is that it is a Maven project. So we can test it through Maven. Let's go to the command line and issue a Maven test. And now, through my build tools, I'm just packaging the test, deploying it again on my servlet, deploy, and undeploy. What happened? The test ran, 0 failure, 0 error, 0 skipped, and everything in 12 seconds on my machine that is not that fast. Yeah, integration tests are still slow. So this is pretty much it about the demonstration we wanted to see. How are we using it? A good example of it is actually the audience targeting application, where we're making something between continuous delivery and continuous deployment, which means that as soon as one of our developers commits code to our GitHub, we have our Jenkins servers that takes care of fetching the source code. According to our workflow, they are splitting the test across different slaves. Each slave is co-located with a Liferay instance. Each slave is following a build pipeline. And what is actually doing this build pipeline, and that's why we're using remote Tomcats, we prepare the Tomcat instance with a given and exactly that one data set. We run the test against that Tomcat instance, we collect the result, and then clean up everything. Actually, there are some integration with Dockers as well. Furthermore, with 7, we are experimenting more and more features that this Arquillian platform makes available to us. We are, for example, testing at client side. You can find some tests in our master code that comes with the annotation run as a client. You can find them in our JSON Web Services part. And what we're doing there, we are checking from outside that JSON Web Services are registered correctly to the platform, and we are running tests against the platform, against the Liferay portal. Even more, Arquillian comes with a very rich community, and they provide quite a lot of different extensions. Those extensions will allow us to go even deeper in the testing process. Extensions such Graphene, Warp, Drone will allow us to move forward from the business logic testing, not only integration testing, but even going deep to controller layer testing and view testing as well. For 7, there are actually quite some surprises coming in. We are working to improve the testability and how you will run tests with Arquillian. However, this is the future, and this is not the time to talk about them. But we are creating our own annotation to make sure to clean out persistent and stuff like that. You can find some example of them in our master branch of the Liferay portal. I strongly suggest you to go to our GitHub and give a look there. So that's pretty much it. I hope this presentation was not that boring. I hope give you some good insight of what we are doing and what we think is working pretty well for us. We're really enthusiastic with this Arquillian platform. Thank you for your time. I guess that maybe if there are any questions, we can talk. 3, 2, 1, lunch.